Have you ever thought that the diary of a stranger could change your life forever after their death? What if that change leads you down a path where you find wealth and fame but peace and true love slip away? Today's story is about Matthew, a man whose luck turned overnight, but in exchange he lost a piece of his soul. This isn't just a story about money, it's about lies, deception, and the storm raging inside a man. The beginning of a dream and a rejection. The story begins with a lonely young man named Matthew, who dreamt of becoming a famous writer. His biggest hope was that his first novel, Someone from Behind, would be picked up by a publisher, ending his poverty forever. However, for now he was working as a laborer, spending his days loading and unloading a truck, everything from groceries to college students' belongings. One day, while making a delivery at a university, he saw a famous novelist named Alice. Alice was young and beautiful, and Matthew fell in love with her at first sight. But his friend quickly reminded him of the harsh reality. He was just a common laborer, and Alice was from a world far out of his reach. Matthew shook off his fantasies and focused on his work. A few days later, the publisher's reply arrived. His novel was rejected. His hopes were shattered in an instant. He called the publisher to ask what was wrong with his writing, but the phone was immediately hung up. The discovery of the diary. The very next day, Matthew was back at work. This time he was assigned to clean an apartment whose elderly tenant had died 2 days earlier. The landlord explained that the old man Leon had lived there alone for 35 years and had never had a single visitor. They needed to donate some furniture and throw away the rest. Entering Leon's room, Matthew saw piles of books and newspapers, indicating the man's great love for reading and writing. As Matthew began packing the items, he found Leon's diary. Opening it, he discovered Leon's beautiful writing. The diary recounted Leon's life as a French soldier during the Algerian War, detailing his first kill and his deep anxieties. Back home, Matthew tried to write a new novel but couldn't produce anything. He couldn't figure out how to create a story that would emotionally connect with people. Suddenly, he had a brilliant idea. He decided to write a novel based on Leon's diary. He changed all the characters' names and molded the diary story into a novel, which he titled Black Sand. Fame, Love and the Lie. The next day, the publisher called, and this time his novel was accepted. Matthew was ecstatic. But because the story wasn't his own, he memorized all the essential points from the diary so he could confidently discuss the plot with the publisher. After committing everything to memory, he burned the diary and claimed the story was entirely his. He didn't realize this lie would bring immense trouble into his life. Matthew met with the publisher, who praised his writing profusely. There, he also saw Alice, who was reviewing his novel. Matthew spoke to Alice, who didn't recognize him. Alice told him that Black Sand was a superb novel, far better than she had expected. The owner of a bookstore then congratulated Matthew, and Alice finally realized that Matthew was the real author of Black Sand. Alice was very impressed. 3 years later, Matthew was a famous writer. His novel was a bestseller, and he was earning a fortune. Better yet, Alice was now his girlfriend. Alice took him to her wealthy parents' magnificent beachside mansion to meet them, Ellen and Helen. Alice's father showed him his rare collection of French Royal-era weapons. Matthew was enjoying the best time of his life. Blackmail and murder. Then, his publisher called. 3 years had passed, and Matthew hadn't delivered a single new novel, which was a breach of his contract. Matthew was distressed because he knew he didn't have the ability to write another story like Black Sand. The publisher withheld his royalties until he delivered the minimum 2 novels required by the contract. Around this time, Stan, Alice's parents' somewhat arrogant godson, came to visit. Stan liked Alice and was not happy to see Matthew. The next day, Matthew tried to write again but failed. He gave his first rejected novel, Someone from Behind, to Alice to read, claiming the publisher had given it to him for review and he was too busy to read it. Stan then approached Matthew. Stan mentioned that his father had worked in Algeria and knew a lot about the country. He was puzzled how Matthew could write such a detailed novel as Black Sand without ever having visited Algeria. Stan continued to probe Matthew's weaknesses, suggesting Alice's standards for an ideal man were very high, which made Matthew uncomfortable. That evening, Alice told Matthew that the novel he gave her was terrible. She couldn't even finish it because it was so boring. Alice was certain no publisher would ever accept such a novel. Matthew was deeply hurt and angry. Days later, Matthew received a call from the bank informing him his credit card was over the limit and required immediate payment. Matthew panicked, as his royalties were stopped and his account was empty. His inability to write a second novel like Black Sand only intensified his stress. In desperation, he faked an accident and went to the hospital claiming he was attacked by muggers. This was merely a ploy to show Alice and her family that he was stressed and self-harming. Meanwhile, Stan was growing suspicious of Matthew. Back home, the publisher continued to press Matthew for a new novel, but he only gave hollow promises, having not written a single paragraph. Alice's father, Ellen, was also concerned about his prospective son-in-law. He told Matthew a letter had arrived for him. When Matthew opened it, he found a picture of Leon, whom Matthew thought was dead. Sometime later, Matthew went to a book signing event with Alice. A man approached him claiming to be Leon's friend. The man, Arno, accused Matthew of misusing a dead man's diary. He demanded $500 million and threatened to expose Matthew as not the true author of Black Sand if he didn't pay. The next day, Arno called again. Matthew told him his account was empty, so Arno threatened that he knew where Alice and her family lived. Forced, Matthew promised to give Arno a very expensive pistol from Ellen's collection. Unbeknownst to Matthew, Stan was standing behind him, listening to their entire conversation. That night, Matthew decided to steal the pistol. He wore Ellen's golf gloves and broke a window to make it look like a break-in. The next morning, the police investigated, and Matthew and Alice suggested installing an alarm system. Stan, whose suspicions about Matthew had solidified, quietly snuck into Matthew's room. Stan found a wooden box. Matthew then entered the room and saw Stan holding the very pistol he had hidden. Stan attacked Matthew, declaring Alice would never be his. In the struggle, Matthew struck Stan on the head with the pistol. Stan died instantly from the blow. Matthew was horrified, as he never intended to kill Stan. Covering up the crime. Moments later, Alice's voice was heard, and Matthew quickly hid Stan's body and belongings in a closet. He noticed Stan's fingernail marks on his neck, which he concealed with a collared shirt. When Alice and Ellen arrived, they asked why Stan had left without saying goodbye. Alice called him, making Matthew panic. He immediately silenced Stan's phone and sent a message to Alice, claiming Stan had an urgent matter to attend to. That night, they were all having dinner when something dripped from the ceiling. Matthew thought it was Stan's blood, but it was just his fear. His nose was actually bleeding. Alice offered to help, but Matthew refused and quickly rushed to check the closet. Later, Alice came to Matthew with her dog. The dog started barking loudly near the closet, which angered Matthew, and he quickly told Alice to leave. That night, while everyone was asleep, Matthew wrapped Stan's body in a mat and pushed it down the stairs. He then took the body to the beach, planning to sink it in the sea. After doing everything, he was speeding back when his boat's engine died. A marine police boat appeared. Panicked, Matthew jumped into the sea and swam toward the shore. It was morning, and he quickly returned home before anyone could realize he had been out. He lay in bed, but Alice was already awake, wondering where Matthew had been all night. Matthew woke up in the afternoon and went to look for Alice. She was on the beach, reading a novel. She was startled by a bundle near the rocks, but it was just Matthew's bad dream. Matthew quickly gave Arno the stolen pistol. Arno was delighted. He revealed that he was Leon's son. He had never visited Leon when he was alive, but now that his diary was a bestseller, he had come to extort money. The confession and the new novel. Upon returning home, Matthew was surprised by Alice's changed demeanor. Alice accused him of cheating the previous night. She showed him multiple calls on his phone, thinking they were from another woman, when they were actually from Arno. Matthew told Alice he only loved her. He confessed that he had always dreamed of her, but back then, he was nothing. Black Sand changed everything. He finally admitted he wasn't a great writer, and the novel wasn't his. He was just afraid that if Alice knew the truth, she would leave him. But Alice did not want to leave him. She said their love was genuine and didn't need a reason. A few days later, Matthew had an idea to write a novel about his life. He wrote his story, a common man falling in love with a rich girl, his struggles, and everything about Stan's murder and the lie. Of course, he changed all the characters' names so Alice and no one else would suspect him. Matthew wanted to prove he could write a good novel with his own ability, and Alice constantly encouraged him. The novel was finally complete, titled False Pretenses. But when he went to the beach to find Alice, he saw that the police had found Stan's body in the sea. His troubles were far from over. The police came to their house and informed them that skin was found under Stan's fingernails, suggesting he had scratched his attacker. The police summoned everyone in the house and Stan's acquaintances to Paris for a DNA test. The final desperate act. Then, Arnaud called again, demanding more money. Matthew was very troubled. If he took the DNA test, he would be caught and go to jail. He desperately sought a way out of this predicament. The next day, Alice and her parents left for Stan's funeral in Paris. Matthew made an excuse about a meeting with the publisher and did not go with them. He gave Alice his new novel and promised to meet her in Paris on Sunday for the DNA test. Matthew went to meet Arnaud. Matthew planned to harm Arnaud and jammed a coin into his seatbelt so it wouldn't work. Arnaud threatened that if he didn't get the money, he would harm Alice and her family. In a fit of rage, Matthew crashed the car into the rocks. Matthew survived, but Arnaud died because his seatbelt failed. Matthew devised a very dangerous plan to avoid the DNA test and jail. He placed Arnaud's body in the driver's seat and put his watch, wallet and phone on him to make it look like Matthew himself had died. The danger of this plan was that he would be separated from Alice forever. He poured petrol on the car and the body and set it on fire. Matthew disappeared, and the world believed he had died in a car accident. 2 years later, Matthew was sitting in a hotel, watching the news. The broadcast reported that Matthew, the famous author of Black Sand, had died in an accident. 2 years later, Matthew was back working as a laborer. He had accepted that he wasn't a great writer, and that this was his fate. For him, living a peaceful life as an ordinary person was better than being famous in jail. His earnings were low, but his life was peaceful because he was no longer living a lie. One rainy day, Matthew stopped by a bookstore on his way home and was shocked to see his picture. The novel he had given Alice, False Pretenses, had been published and had become a bestseller across Europe. He saw Alice inside with a child, who was in fact his own son. Matthew was utterly heartbroken because he could not embrace his beloved child. Just then Alice looked toward the door, and the story ends there.